Jeff Ross. Jeff, how are you? Jeff just hosted some ridiculous talent show on ABC. A talent show. Where do you get the balls to host a talent? You running a talent show is like Michael Vick running the ASPCA. Maybe next year you could host a handsome contest.
Do you have thick skin? Let's all come together.
Hello there, my emotional support animals. Welcome to Thick Skin with Jeff Ross. Life is hard, but we're getting through it together. And a really interesting show planned today because we're going to celebrate the life of the late, great comedian Greg Giraldo. There's a new book about him coming out. It's called A Comedian Story. We've been looking it over. Ed looked it over. It looks really cool. A lot of my friends were interviewed for it. Colin Quinn wrote the foreword. And we're going to talk to co-author Matt Balaker. Is that how you say it? Balaker, a little bit later. Matt, you're allowed to just say hi.
Okay. I was hanging out for 15 minutes.
No, this isn't a congressional hearing. Relax. And we'll talk to him a little bit later. We have some touchy subjects planned, and of course, I'm joined by friends because this is a friends and family podcast, and I love when friends come over. And Ed's here. Hi, Ed.
What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Cousin Ed, producer, doing a great job lately, man.
Thank you.
Our numbers are skyrocketing. Tell people how to do stuff.
Well, I mean, what do you mean? What do you mean, like how to find the show? Or?
Yeah, like what's it called? Like and comment. What do they call it?
Subscribe.
You got to review things. You tell people you like the show. You got to rate and review on iTunes.
And you have to subscribe on YouTube.
Subscribe on YouTube. You subscribe on iTunes. You subscribe wherever you subscribe. You subscribe on Spotify. We're all over the place these days.
Jeez, it's a lot to think about.
It's too much, arguably.
You got to like and subscribe and rate and
review. Yes. You
Why does a listener doing all the work? I get to just get stoned and come down to my basement. Everybody's got. We're giving them chores all the time.
If you like the show, you pop it. Make it more popular. The more popular we get, the better the show gets. I promise.
Well. I do love doing
That's
it.
how everything in entertainment works. The more popular it gets,
it's very
higher
cathartic.
Quality it is.
It's very
like the Fast and the Furious movies. You know?
Yeah.
More of them.
Yeah, no more Tokyo drifts. We're done Tokyo drifting this podcast.
Was that a Fast and the Furious movie?
One of them.
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh, that doesn't
I've never seen that.
Yeah, I don't think drift is a good name for a movie about fast cars.
Well, it's a term. For you drift behind the other one's draft.
Oh, drift and draft. Jasmine's here. Jasmine Leigh. Hi, Jazzy.
What up, Jeff? How are you doing?
Thanks for coming over.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I had some touchy subjects that I felt like you would have a good perspective on, so we asked Jasmine to come over and help us with that. And a good buddy that I don't get to see enough is here. He's one of the premier roast writers in the world, and he's currently on staff over at Jimmy Kimmel Live, and he's just a good guy. He's just a good guy, and he happened to be writing partners with Greg Giraldo, so I thought it was appropriate that Jesse, Double J, came by today. Great to see you, pal.
What's up, guys? How are you? Thanks for having me.
That's good. I love your FM DJ voice.
Thanks, yeah.
Lovely to be here.
Yeah, it's
I
really
can't help
good.
myself.
How's life over at Jimmy Kimmel Live?
It's great, man. It's actually a lot of fun. Yeah. So, yeah.
What kind of hours you putting in over there?
It's not terrible. You write from home you write the monologue from home.
Really?
In the morning. Yeah. I mean, you have to basically have you have to start with hitting the ground running with your first joke at like 7 a.m. So that kind of is not as fun.
OMG.
But you're in your jammies, so it's fine, and you can just sit there. So I get up around 6:30 and pound coffee for a half hour, and then you basically have like about 2 hours to work, 7 to 9, and you send the stuff in. And then you have like some leisure time too. Like I have a 1-year-old, so I hang with him. Yeah. And then you just have to get in by like 11. That's not that bad. So I mean, you've been up for a while, but you're only there from like 11 to 5.
So presumably somebody reads that stuff and those.
Jimmy does, yeah. So he'll read the jokes, and then by the time you get in, he's picked the batch, and then you do a second round when you get in of writing the jokes. So.
And it's all monologue. Is that your specialty?
No, it's different than other late night shows. Like they're real sort of specialists about it, but we pitch bits and monologue jokes in the morning at the same time. And it's more important that the bits have to get in super early because you have to turn that around on the same day.
Did you have a good one today?
I did. I had jokes on the show for sure. I didn't get any bits picked. No, it's not true. We're currently
competition every day.
Yeah, we're currently having this kind of hilarious. Like I love the controversy of like starting a fight with an unlikely entity for no reason. Like back when I was at Midnight, I started this war with the Cheesecake Factory that took a whole week, and it was like really funny. I thought to like be a comedy show and like drag them into it, and and so anyway, so currently there's a thing where Jimmy has this huge campaign that's that Gonzaga University doesn't exist, right? Because like nobody's ever heard of it outside of the basketball
which university?
team.
Yeah,
Gonzaga. That's how you pronounce
Gonzola.
it. Sorry, it's Gonzaga University. You've heard of the basketball team, right? They're in the Sweet 16. They're in the Sweet 16 like all the time.
I've heard
but
of
like,
Zags, yeah,
where the fuck is it? Do you know where it is?
I think it's
It's
in
in-
Jersey, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. You have no idea. Nobody knows. That's the point. It's like not a real university, right? Like they just are a basketball team that's propped up by some secret cabal. That's kind of like the gist of this bit. And like all the Gonzaga students are like so furious with this in like a funny way. And like it's been like the local morning news every day. It's in Spokane, by the way, if for those of you.
Spokane.
So like the Good Morning Spokane people like are just frenzied about this. They're just like, we exist, Jimmy Kimmel. You know what I mean? They're just shouting.
Where's
to TV.
Spokane at?
So it's a really funny bit. So anyway, so like
geography.
I'm always pitching. So I have a thing that is going to be on tomorrow, but I can't talk about. But
Good for
yeah,
you.
So yeah. Anyway,
Awesome.
That's really fun. You must like that regular.
I do.
You get to work that choke muscle every day,
Yeah,
first
yeah.
thing in the morning.
yeah, you get pretty quick about it, like because you're doing it all day long.
So do you have to read all the newspapers the night before, or how do you get your news?
It's surprising how like you just completely shut your brain off when you're not required to write jokes, So I don't check the news. Like when I don't have to, I stop. Like when we're on hiatus for 2 weeks, I just see it pop on my like Trump did. Who gives a shit? Like I don't. So then when we come back, it's just like, what the fuck did he do? Like you have to
Feel
catch up
lost.
on all. Like, can you imagine like not paying attention for 2 weeks to the shit Trump has said? Like you're so lost, So
Yeah.
Monday morning you come back in after a 2 week hiatus, and you're like, fuck, I really have to. So anyway,
And you're having a baby again?
a second one in
Oh,
2 years.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
15
yeah.
months apart?
Yeah, 20 months apart. So so the she's due on Wednesday. So
That's
Oh,
awesome.
wow.
Yeah, a week from
An
today.
Aries baby. When
And-
is
so
it?
by the time it's theirs, I might have 2 babies.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they'll both be writing jokes for Jimmy Kimmel. 7 a.m. They're going to have to get him in on the act,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. My son can say about 20 words, so I don't know how helpful that's going to be at the moment, but they're funny words.
What does he say?
Gonzaga.
Yeah, he can say Gonzaga. Yeah.
in Spokane and doesn't exist.
Yeah, he can say the colors. He can say a couple shapes. He says the N-word all the time. But that's
my
not
God.
that's not what I'm talking about. So,
It starts in the home, ladies and gentlemen.
but yeah, no, it's pretty cute. He says mommy and daddy and stuff. It's adorable.
That's really
You
cute.
do
I
like
don't wanna
daddy
be-
daycare?
So, I mean, I work, but like I spend as much time with him as I can. So.
That's great,
Yeah.
man. I bet you're a great dad.
Thanks, man. I'm good at the reading the children's books. I do characters and stuff.
You can act them out.
Yeah, I think it's like the one.
What's your
advantage
favorite? What's
to-
the best children's book? What's the funniest children's book?
Oh shit!
Have you made a 1-year-old laugh yet?
Yeah, well, yeah, but not like I'm not proud of it. You know what I mean? Like you make them laugh by falling over and still just like making a dumb face or
Hard work, though.
taking a carrot and spitting it across the room. Like that's the shit that makes them laugh. So
Kid's
it's not
gonna
like,
cry when he figures out that he's gonna grow up to look like you.
half like me. So it's not all bad. But
Right.
But yeah. No, there's actually if you give there's a lady called Julie Donaldson. She's like definitely like I don't pay attention to children's books until I had a baby, but she's like the fucking new Dr. Seuss. Like her shit, like she's great. Her rhymes are fantastic because you really become like persnickety about rhyming in children's books. There's some fucking garbage, lazy, shitty rhyme schemes in children's books. But fucking Julie Donaldson nails it. You should look her up.
I'll
My
look her
favorite
up.
was Goodnight Moon.
Goodnight Moon?
Yeah, that was I used to read that. Well, I didn't read it, but my mom read it to me every night.
I kind of hate that one. Just because I've had to read it a shit ton of times. It's like
Good night, moon.
Right.
Good night, stars. Good night, Jasmine. It wasn't in there, but it should have been.
No, there's a good night mush. There's a bowl of mush. Like nobody's eaten mush since like 1904 when that book was written. But that's like there's a page devoted to good night mush,
I
and
love
it's like
mush.
Kittens.
I love a
no
good
fucking
mush
way
too.
he knows.
Speaking
On a
of books,
Sunday
have you had a
morning.
chance to look over the Greg Giraldo?
I read about the first 200 pages of that book, and I did not get to the ending. But spoiler alert, he dies at the end. I know what happens. So
On my
I know
birthday.
gonna buy it.
you were a co-conspirator with Greg Giraldo. That's how I know
was.
you, Jesse.
Yeah, that is how we
You
got to
guys
know
would
each
write
other.
the roast before, and roast fans, of course, will want to read this book, Greg Giraldo, a comedian story, that is just coming out. Where?
Amazon. Have you heard of
Great,
that? Yeah.
Amazon, great.
And Book Soup in West Hollywood.
And we're going to talk to Matt about his new book in a little while because Greg was a really important comic in the New York scene, in the Hollywood scene, in the roast scene, and he was beloved. And for roast fans, he was top shelf.
yeah,
Top shelf all the way.
Really cool to me when he passed. By the way, so well, we'll get into it later. But yeah, you were super sweet to me. I remember it was like that's when I kind of got to know you. You know, like I knew you before, but you invited me to the Tarantino roast. You know, as your guest or whatever.
Greg was supposed to roast Quentin Tarantino,
Mm.
and it got postponed because Quentin Tarantino asked for a little time because a dear friend of his passed away. His editor passed away, so we had to delay Quentin Tarantino's Friars Club roast. That was an untelevised roast. And I remember Greg was supposed to be on that show,
Yeah,
and he didn't make it.
yeah. But
And I invited you.
It was you just sent me a text out of the blue, and like I didn't even know you had my number or whatever, and I was like, it really was like pretty nice of you, you know. So you and
I felt like even you'd probably prepared a lot of material with Greg.
yeah.
And I felt like you must feel, just the idea that you wouldn't be able to see the show go down
Right.
after spending that much time thinking about it. And I knew that your roasting days, your roast writing days, they couldn't have been coming to an end. And in fact, they were just beginning in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, you were also really instrumental in that too, because then I wrote in your show, The Burn and stuff, like right after that. But anyway, we can get into it later. It's all fucking sappy bullshit. But I'm just saying,
best for Jeff.
I really fucking benefited from Greg Giraldo's passing. But
Not as much as I did because then, now I'm the funniest guy. Now I'm the funniest guy at the roast.
Someone had to go. Oh, Jeff, I was actually talking about you in the Friars Club the other day. Do you know who Darren is?
Oh, Darren Carter.
Darren Carter.
Yeah.
They said they used to always be at the Friar Club and how such a cool guy you were, and they used to look like, who is this cool dude just sitting in the Friars Club with all the big hot shots? And now you're a big hot shot.
See that? The
Yeah.
Friars Club is a New York and for a while LA institution. It's 100 years old, and it's where comedians go to commiserate.
and so is everyone there.
Yeah. That was my first big joke ever at a Friars Club roast.
What's that?
I
Oh,
walked
did I just
out
steal
and
one of your
said-
jokes?
No, I walked out and looked at the crowd and said, wow, I've seen younger faces on cash.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, this podcast is about getting through life. So it's good that we're going to take a look back at Greg Giraldo, and I really appreciate you coming out. Sure, dude. Ed, what is our first touchy subject that we need to tackle?
Touchy subjects. First touchy subject of the day. Jussie Smollett. Jussie is off the hook. All 16 felonies have been dropped by the district attorney. His record has been expunged. Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, says Jussie is making fools of all of us.
Yes, he is.
Jussie served 16 hours of community service and agreed to forfeit his $10,000 bond that he put up. Assistant State Attorney Joe Maggots said he does not believe that the star is innocent, but has decided not to pursue charges because Jussie has no criminal record or considered him a violent
Not only
threat.
did he have all the charges dropped, he just got a full wrestling scholarship to USC.
Who did he pay
The
off to get
10,000
into
of the-
USC? No, he paid off somebody. That's what happened. We all know that he's guilty, but with how America treats black people and how America treats gays, am I really that upset that a black gay man got away scot-free for a crime he committed? Not so much. He didn't kill anyone.
He was looking at 48
How dare
years.
you? As a gay black person, I beg your pardon.
I mean, we needed a win.
That's not a win.
I know it's not a win. It's
He
an
compromised.
It's the way everybody celebrated when OJ.
He compromised the entire
He did.
black and gay people, black people.
The Blaze.
Anybody who's victim of a hate crime, he throws a question mark. Most of the time, it's true. So now, if somebody like Jussie throws that out there, that
They're going to use his case as
people will
precedent.
always doubt everything because or even if they don't doubt it, they'll use it as an excuse to doubt it publicly.
Okay.
And
How about this? All right, he's guilty, probably. All right.
he's
Probably guilty. Who cares? At the same time, does he deserve to be in prison?
No, he deserves to at least admit he lied.
Murderers and all. He's a non-violent person.
Well, he's violent to himself.
Well, this is
He really beat the fuck out of himself.
He really did. This is what I think.
He really threw himself a hell of a beating.
I mean, imagine what jail in Chicago is like.
Right.
It's like the murder capital of America right now. And this poor fucker would have been thrown in with those people?
Not poor
they would
fucker.
have ripped him to shreds.
He probably would have gotten in a good relationship because he's already, but
I think anyone who doesn't do anything violent, I don't know. I feel bad throwing anyone in jail who didn't, hurt anyone.
he shouldn't be in jail, but he didn't admit he was guilty.
He could have gotten found guilty.
I think that they should have dropped the charges in exchange for him making a public apology. All jokes aside, that's what I think should have happened because really we know he did it and we know and everyone knows he did it and just because he got off doesn't mean he's innocent because a lot of people get off that aren't innocent. Mm-hmm. But I would have liked an apology and I would have moved on. I don't think he deserves jail time, but he definitely deserves an apology and more than 16 hours of community service. He took more than 16 hours of our lives watching this.
But this has been fun.
All the jokes, too. And a lot of material.
Yeah, the community service should reflect the amount of time the police investigated the thing, at least.
Oh,
yeah,
exactly.
But what about the bodybuilder brothers that Empire has to hire? I mean,
And
I think they're the real victims.
Now they're not victims.
I think so.
Actually, they are victims because you only paid them $3,500. And where the hell do you get off paying someone $3,500 and think they're going to keep your secret? That's crazy to me.
So that was for training.
Cheap hoax.
They failed.
Secret keeping training.
And I still don't understand why they went back to the scene of the crime because I still don't understand how they even got caught. Like, even if they saw two random black figures, how did they find out that it was those two people? That's
He needed to do a much better job faking his cut. Did you see that? It was like
that was a
little
real
hairline
cut.
scratch.
It was a
he
fake
probably
punch.
did it with his pinky nail. Just like,
A little razor.
I think he's a great actor.
underrated singer. Yeah.
He is a great actor because he is denying.
He's a terrible
denying.
writer, though, because none of it was believable.
Yeah.
He made that ridiculous story almost believable because he's a good actor.
Yes.
But it definitely needed some.
Left the noose around his neck all night.
He needs an Oscar for lying, for sure. He's almost better than Donald Trump.
Well, shout out to Chicago law enforcement who's very pissed off.
Take down R. Kelly.
I can feel why. All right. Good riddance, Jussie Smollett.
We'll probably see
He's
him
going to come
around
back.
again.
He still needs to apologize.
I'm really trying to
for
get his part on Empire.
I can believe it.
Of all the pronunciations of it, I like your version better. Smollett, like mullet. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Smollett.
Yeah. I think we should we stick with Smollett from now on.
What's next, Ed?
Well, we have another touchy subject update because we talked about Jussie before, and then also, do you remember the first female spacewalk?
Of course.
Canceled.
What?
They canceled the first female spacewalk because none of the spacesuits fit.
That's a joke.
Are you kidding me? That has to be fake news.
I
No,
saw
that's
that.
real.
Hillary Clinton tweeted about this today, saying, "Get another suit."
They can't get a tailor? Like, come on.
I mean, it's a spacesuit. It's not like a tailor situation.
Of all the women
I think
and the
that-
gay women in the world, they couldn't find women to fit these suits.
Well, you would
they're
need bigger women. I don't know.
No, we don't know
Are
what
they too
happened. What
big
I'm
or too
guessing
small for the
happened is
suits?
one of them got fat and couldn't fit into it anymore.
You know what the detail I thought was really interesting about this because it was in our joke packet the other day is that they literally said that NASA said they only had mediums Like, doesn't that seem surprising that that's the size system that they use?
No, because they
Like-
probably shoot these spaceships off with a weight, all the weight calculations. So they
Yeah,
they
but-
go, well, we have to assign people that fit this weight, and then maybe the commander weighs 260, so now that they have to work back from that, down rank, and it makes sense.
like wrestling.
They probably didn't release the information in the most elegant way that they could have, but this probably was some sort of weight issue versus, and these spacesuits are not exactly like they just bring in like Karl Lagerfeld in to hem
No,
them.
I know, but like I would imagine that would be some sort of complex, system of it would be measured in some kind in centimeters or something in metric, and it wouldn't just be medium like the fucking options to get a Shamrock Shake. You know what I mean? Like, do you have any large spacesuits available? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I was just kind of surprised that they just go with standard, small, medium, and large.
Take one out and
for
put it
fucking
together.
astronaut
I
costumes.
mean, take two.
So,
Take two and join them. Then.
Spacesuits are apparently $22 million each.
Really?
So that would explain why they're just going,
All right.
fuck it.
I understand. We can spend
$22
other things
million.
with that money.
What are they made out of?
I mean, shit that doesn't blow up in space? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, this is very sad that they canceled the mission because I can personally think of at least 10 women I'd like to shoot off into space. What's next?
do you
pal?
remember?
Yes.
I know we said we were going to talk about this later, but you remember Giraldo's joke about that lady astronaut who went to go see her boyfriend and she wore diapers the whole way?
Right.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
yeah. That was a
What was
fun
that joke?
story.
He had a joke about it, and my favorite detail was that she was married. You know what it's like not for nothing, but like what kind of piece of shit does that husband feel like in this scenario?
Oh my
It's
God.
like, Jesus Christ, she won't even fucking make me a sandwich. She's shitting her
Going-
pants across the country for this motherfucker. What does he have, a dick made of solid gold?
The things you do for
That was a
penis.
great joke about it. So, I really enjoyed that. Anyway.
She was dickmatized for sure.
Stigmatized. Greg had a lot of great jokes.
Yeah.
Anytime one comes to mind, blurt
Oh,
it
okay,
out.
just blur it out.
Yeah,
All
it'll
right,
be
great,
good.
cool.
It'll be good. What's
Okay.
next, pal?
Here's a new touchy subject. Or it's kind of an old one. It's a new one. All right. So because the world's getting hotter, climate change, the ice is melting on Mount Everest. And so all the bodies of people who, because
yeah.
when you die on Mount Everest,
They leave you there.
just leave you there.
Oh my God.
Because it's so hard to get them down.
It's raining bodies.
No, so now it's defrosting and the bodies are starting to decompose. And so they have to go and make missions and to get the bodies back down.
Oh, wow.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
there's over 300 climbers have died and are frozen up there since 1921. And some of the bodies are actually used for directions.
they're like maps. They're like
What?
landmarks.
Yeah, they're
it's
like,
like,
make a left
make a
at-
left at the guy
Make
in
the
the
left at
blue
the left.
jacket.
Oh my
Yeah.
No, make a left at the guy not wearing a jacket.
Wow.
If you were, would you guys leave your friend if you're in Mount Everest?
You don't have a choice.
And one of them, you don't have a
Yeah,
choice.
it's so
You're
dangerous.
climbing
a
Like,
mountain.
you literally have to. Like, you can't. You would die yourself if you tried to drag a
I
body.
feel like I'd probably end up dying because I'm such a Libra. Like I wouldn't be able to live like knowing I just left them there to freaking decompose.
I'm also
years
a Libra,
later.
and I would have no problem leaving them up there.
Maybe
By the
since
way,
I'm
how do you know
I'm
what
a Libra too, actually.
women
that
Libras
she
are so
reminded
much
me of.
nicer. But it's like, oh
How do you
my
even walk
goodness.
away?
Yeah.
Larry! Larry! How many Larrys do you get before you're like, all right, it's getting dark.
Yeah.
Oh no!
Larry!
Somebody probably whisper their friends. I'm like,
I mean,
Time to go, Larry!
I knocked on his frozen forehead. I tried everything. It's nothing. Yeah, so.
oh my goodness, yeah, I wouldn't be out there anyway though.
I mean, you just shut the mountain down for a week and just throw them off the side, right? And that,
Yeah.
isn't that how you fix this?
You would think gravity would,
Yeah.
help
Sherpas.
in this at least.
Are great. It
my
should be able to
goodness.
take care of this.
Yeah. So,
Rest in peace to all of those.
So how
people.
many,
So are they gonna
bodies,
remove
how
them
many
now?
bodies are defrosting on the mountain?
They're
They
hunting for
said
bodies.
there's over 300 people have died up there that they know of.
How is it legal to do this?
Yeah.
what?
Are you gonna say
First
it's
of all-
fun? It's fun to
first of
go
all,
and
it's fucking
die.
Tibet.
It's
Like,
fun.
I don't
It's fun to
know.
die.
So,
Their biggest problem: too many frozen bodies.
It's how this town makes all their money. It's this giant freaking mountain that people like go up there and die on.
Wow.
right.
Someone's defrosting that food and eating it.
Shout out to the Sherpas. I thought for Sherpa they would have taken care of this.
God damn it! You still got it.
Why is the master?
What's next, Ed?
All right. So, a New York gay couple has been pretending a plastic baby doll is their child for almost 30 years now. AJ Sapelnik
crazy.
and Mark Kirby, instead of having a child or adopting a child, they bought a plastic doll for $7 at a Parisian flea market.
Only $7.
The doll has matching clothes as them.
What?
They take it to black tie dinners and
Shut
put it in
up.
little suits, the worldwide vacations, and they even brought it and bought it its own seat at Hamilton.
They even breastfeed it.
They paid a lot.
yeah.
What?
That's
So-
like shit birds do. You know, like some bird, like their fucking egg cracks, and then they just like, pick up a stick and pretend it's a baby for the rest of their lives because they're just a crazy dumb bird. It's
they good
insane that
parents?
human
They
beings
have
are
money
doing
enough
that.
to go to black tie events, and they're walking around with a plastic baby.
It's like Queer Eye meets Chucky.
And it's not even one of those expensive babies that you get in middle school that teach you how to be a parent.
Oh,
where
like
you
the
like
sack
stick-
of flour or whatever?
That's what we did.
You're showing
Yeah,
your
we had a
age.
sack of flour. Oh, wait,
We
what?
got an electronic
been
baby.
updated?
Yes, you get a real baby and it
Oh,
cries and it comes with a little key and you like stick the key in it, to like feed it or do whatever, and you get it for a week and you don't have a baby after that.
That really does
Wow,
teach you
that's
parenting because
I
the number
haven't
of
had a
times
baby
I've pulled out
since.
my keys and been like, "Shut the fuck up!" Like with my baby.
Oh, yeah.
Like keys really do
I
work.
thought you were about to say
I'm
hit
telling
the
you.
baby. I was like, no.
No, I've never fed keys to my baby, but it does. Babies love keys. It works. Yeah.
I guess it's kind of the same thing as keeping your dog.
How many parents does it take to raise a doll? 2. One to dress it and take care of it, and the other one not to care that they're insane.
They're meant to be together. Match made in heaven.
Wow.
Love is love, baby. Love is love.
Yeah, that flower thing. I forgot about that.
They
till
have
right
to
now.
be like very rich for like everybody in their circle
they're
to
filthy
tolerate
rich.
this
Yeah.
bullshit.
Well, I mean, they got
and
me
have to
on-
like just pretend to be like, no,
But
we're
they only
fine
paid
with your
$7 for their baby.
doll.
Like that's messed
Yeah,
up.
but they paid $7,000 for that extra
for
Hamilton
the
ticket.
seat to Hamilton.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Right now, they're on a cruise around the world
With the plastic baby.
with the plastic baby.
Have they ever
They're getting
locked-
some clothes. They're going to Singapore to pick up some suits that they had made for it.
Who found them?
It's the size of a preemie baby.
Oh my. Oh.
It's a baby doll. It's a
I'm
baby.
gonna get me a baby.
Any insight
too.
as to why they did this or their
Yeah.
personality?
They're crazy. I mean, they need to have something to love. I don't
Functional
know.
crazy.
How'd you find this? That's
Yeah.
impressive research.
Where are they?
Hey, weird news. It's all over the place.
They're in New York.
Yeah, they're New Yorkers.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Of course.
Yeah. They're socialites.
No.
People know these. They've been around forever. They're filthy rich. They go at fancy parties all the time.
Oh,
I bet they, like,
Mark and AJ.
I bet they introduce it too.
I wonder
you
if
know?
they paid to
Like
get the baby
people.
into college.
It's enrolled at SC.
Right.
Why aren't they on the podcast? They'd be more fun than this fucking author.
I definitely want to meet them when I go to New York. Can I hold your baby?
The baby's called Digby DuPont.
Shut up.
Yes.
That's a freaking mustard.
Wow.
It's time for your bath.
Oh god.
Oh my God, do they bathe it?
It has Cartier and Rolex watches.
I bet they have
Wow.
like an Instagram with like 600,000 followers, and they like put the baby on fucking cruise ships and shit.
Here they are. If anyone wants to see them.
I knew it.
Oh yeah, they look crazy.
They look
and
like the type,
they
yeah.
look exactly like the people that have plastic baby doll.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They're all dressed exactly the same. All
Oh
three
my
of them.
They
gosh,
should
that's,
bury that baby on Mount Everest.
at least it won't decompose.
That'd be
on.
great because, like, after a year or so, you couldn't tell that it was like a doll, you know?
Yeah.
And then the next person who goes up there is like, what the fuck?
Right.
Somebody gave birth up here?
Brought their child.
And left the baby.
All right, give me an extra touchy subject. Come on, Ed.
All right, Cardi B.
All right.
We all know Cardi B because she screams a lot, and she's admitted to drugging and robbing men to make money in the past.
Really?
Because she had limited options.
She had to do what she had to do.
She had to do
behind her
what
now.
she had to do.
This is the thing. This is the world of social media. They don't let anything live. They don't let you grow. They don't let you learn. And I've been on Facebook and they've been trying to compare Cardi B to Bill Cosby. And this is the difference. She didn't rape anybody. She just robbed them. And yes, it's still a crime. It's still wrong. But being a rapist and, a robber are two different words for a reason.
Yeah.
I haven't brought myself to really, let this in yet because it's really touchy for me. I love Cardi.
She has never been known to be a good person.
Well, she said that the other day. I thought I saw
Right.
a
She
Reddit
did
thing where
say
it was
that.
like, I'm not a good
did say
human
that.
being. Why did you think I was?
Why
what the
wouldn't I
fuck?
rob and
Like,
drug
yeah,
someone?
like, what do you
In my
expect from
character,
me?
of course.
Yeah, like,
Wow.
But so
She would rob them and drug them.
Yeah, she would drug them, then rob them.
This is what she had to do.
That's the way to go.
This is what
Right
she-
sequence. That's important.
This is what she would have to do to me to get me to listen to her music.
Bopping in your sleep.
So, but you were just saying, did Jazzy? Did that? It's not a thing she just said. Like
No,
somebody
she
dug
said-
this thing up. She said years ago.
A hater, whenever you're starting to win, and this is the thing. I'm
It's
not
an
saying
old-
it's
it's an
right.
old interview.
It's old.
Oh, okay,
I'm
right.
not saying
It's
it's,
not
right.
even an
John
interview.
Wayne
She
thing
just
a couple
like
weeks ago.
She just did it. She just threw it up there like
Right.
on
was a
social
live.
media a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a
Oh,
rant,
okay.
an Instagram rant on Instagram.
Who's
this isn't
saving these
new
old
information.
rants?
Yeah.
What? You can't do anything. I'm like really afraid as to what's going to happen when I start making money because Lord
How
knows.
many men have you drugged
Yeah,
and
don't-
stole money from?
What? I'm just kidding. I haven't drugged anybody and I haven't stolen any money, but I have done some things that I'm not proud of, and I have posted some pictures that I hope are deleted, but they probably not.
Talk about him.
I mean, if
Well,
you,
my mom found out I was gay from my Facebook, so
I
let's
feel
just
you,
say that.
Jazzy. I was up all night deleting all my old blackface photos.
Yes, I'm glad.
All.
No,
Did
I'm,
you
how
burn
many
the wig?
fold-
Did you burn the afro wig
I'm
too?
halfway done. I'm halfway done.
I feel like if you have to at least there has to be part of you if you go to a hotel with a stripper you just met. There has to be part of you that's like she might drug and rob me. You know what I
Why
mean?
are
Like
you going
have
to a
to be
hotel with a stripper
kind
you
of
just
No,
met?
I
aware
never.
that-
I don't think people would think that.
Yes,
All
in
right.
New York, and you're going. First of all
If
strip
you don't
clubs are
get
in the
laid, it
hood.
depends who it is. If you're like, oh my God, she likes me.
No. But like at the club, like if you met her at the strip club, like you actually think
At
that
work.
like you know what I'm saying?
A lot of
like I'm not
guys-
saying like he met her over coffee.
Yeah.
And then it was like
happened
one
to be a
night
stripper,
stand.
yeah.
Like
Just-
that I would
yeah.
completely. But you have to be like at least kind of like I might get beaten and killed here. You know what I mean? Like there
But
has
this
to
is
be
the
like
thing. Strip clubs and black strip clubs, where
Not if
they're
she's
always in
kissing
the
you
hood.
and grabbing your junk.
That's
and
her job.
That's
She's
what I'm saying. Like once you're out of there, I'm sure she was very convinced. I mean, I'm
Right.
not defending this behavior, but
She definitely.
No.
I mean, it was his fault. I feel it. I'm not going to say
But
it's
the-
not the victim's fault. I take it back. Don't.
But there should be a
freaking
part of
shun
you if you're
me.
like a regular attender of strip clubs, be like, well, this is oddly easy. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this is coming to me a little quickly.
And his first
So-
victim has come out. Her first victim has come out and spoke. Has anyone read about that?
No.
Okay, so
Well,
it's
he's
this black
recently
guy.
divorced, so now he gets to bring it up.
Exactly, because he said that he was engaged, and that's why he didn't want to say anything about it. He was like, "Yeah, I was at the strip club, and I never go to the strip club, but tonight I really wanted to go. And I talked her into going to the hotel with me, and next thing I knew, she took $850 and my iPhone Touch. When did iPhone Touches even come out?
I don't know.
Long time ago. But yeah, he got. You shouldn't have been going home with a stripper. It's illegal. Illegal activity brings more
Wait,
illegal
what was
activity.
illegal?
Going home
To
with
go
a
home to
stripper.
pay for sex,
I don't
I
think
mean,
that-
not going home with a stripper. He was going to pay for sex. Or maybe he wasn't. He
That's
didn't
what
say.
I'm saying.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
don't
Oh,
know.
I
he
thought
might-
that,
okay, if he
that
was
she
just
was
going
leading
with
him
her.
to believe that she really
All
liked
right,
it.
yeah.
They were
Inexcusable.
gonna fall in love. It was sweet.
All right, that is different
She
than
was
going to pay
admitting
for
to
sex.
criminal behavior back when she didn't even realize it was criminal behavior, and she didn't know she was going to be big.
She knew it was
Jay-Z
criminal
talks about
behavior.
being a drug dealer
All
all
the
the time.
time.
He's a
Crack dealer.
Yes.
I sold joints at my prom.
I sold weed too, Jeff.
The
out
statute
here.
of limitations is up on that in
I
New
really
Jersey.
think it was.
How long did your,
How much were they?
How long did your career, your weed career go?
Less than a year.
Mine lasted for 2 months. I started owing myself $150, and I was like, okay, weed business is not for me.
Did you
put
even
it
get to
down.
enjoy the prom, or did you basically have
Best
to
night
sell
of my
weed
life.
the whole time?
No, I had a blast.
Okay, all right.
Oh, I got all that done way before.
Oh, all right, and then
way
you just hung
before
out at
the
the prom. Okay, all right. I just imagine you with like a little booth set up,
I
like a
love
career
Cardi
day.
B. I hope
Cardi
she
B, too.
recovers from this. And
She
everybody
will.
makes mistakes when they're young, and I do love Cardi B. And Cardi B, if you're listening, I think you should marry Sting, so you'd be Cardi B Sting.
That's what they call my baby.
All right.
That,
What's next, Ed?
Cardi B drugging.
I like these animal stories.
Yes.
That we've been doing a lot of animal stories lately, and
I
it's
like
not
that.
necessarily a touchy subject, but it's a lot of fun.
sure.
A New Jersey family has found a hawk in their tub after it flew through the bathroom window. The hawk is perfectly fine. Police shoot it out of the home, and it went back to a nearby tree.
Aw.
That's all. It's
Was it
just a
taking a
nice
bath?
little. It was enjoying the bath.
Yeah.
The bath was they filled up tub for some
A
reason
little
in their
bit
house.
sore, needed to relax.
So
its
what happened
muscles.
exactly?
A hawk flew into someone's house, and they
Wait,
had
this means this is. See, I have a hawks that live in the tree outside.
yes.
You have like
So
3.
I think about this all the time. If a hawk flew in here,
You're always trying to
game
get them to be at the house.
yeah, I want them to come over.
But
Yeah.
they don't like.
So
wait,
You
what
like
are these
hold
peop-
up your arm like a Saudi,
look at he's holding it up. He's
like
ready.
a Saudi dignitary,
He's in practicing.
just hoping it'll land there.
Yeah.
Perch.
You just put a little hood on him, and then you got him forever.
Maybe you need the sleeve first. If you just stand out there with the hawk sleeve, they'll come.
Yeah. So all of a sudden the hawk flies in the house.
And they took a bath because they had a bath
Man.
filled with soap and water because I guess they were about to jump in it or something.
And that must have been hawkward.
Come on, nice. So the window was open.
The window was open.
Okay, that's not how I pictured it. At
No, it didn't
first. I
fly-
just
it
imagined
didn't
it like,
break through.
like
Going through the
just
door?
smashing through a glass window to take a
Oh
bath.
my gosh.
Straight into the tub.
I imagine
Yeah.
it walking up, opening the door, peeking in, and then going up to the bathtub.
A very timid hawk, you imagine.
Sure. Okay.
This article was on Fox News, not the network, just actual foxes telling each other what's going on in the forest.
It's probably way better than Fox News.
Wow, that is a crazy. I'm fascinated by these hawks. So,
Yeah,
if
you
anybody
love
has any advice on how I can get the hawks to hang out by my house, email us at.
You can
At
probably make some-
thickskinwithjeffross@gmail. Yes, if you know how to lure a hawk.
Mice, right?
No,
When
ew,
you-
let's not
yeah,
talk about
mice in
those.
a slingshot.
Ew,
Draw
ew,
back.
ew.
Yeah.
Get some bubbles going.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I hate rodents.
I
have-
watch these
oh.
hawks all the time. I love watching them. They're so beautiful. They're majestic. They are.
I just love the
They'll
way
be coming back
you said
out
that.
soon. Actually, they probably didn't leave. We just left because it was cold.
Yeah.
They're still here.
Yeah,
Very
just
cool.
throw some mice in your bathtub.
No, can we
Yeah.
stop
Do it,
saying
right?
the M word, please?
What?
I'm definitely afraid of them. Now
Oh,
I'm
you
gonna
said
have
the M
nightmares.
word. You
Yeah,
really
like-
have to
Oh, I
enunciate.
said M.
You really have to enunciate.
He didn't say the
When
N
you
word,
say
guys.
the
Don't
M
cancel
word.
him. Don't
and I was
cancel
like,
him.
what did you accuse me of?
It was all under his breath. Yeah.
Excuse me. Clutch his pearls.
We're
We're gonna bring back Greg back now. From the
Jeff's going to lead a seance.
Jeff,
so
shut the
yeah.
I
lights
have my
off. By
candle
the
in
way.
the trunk.
So,
I killed the lights a little bit because I wanted to relax.
Sure.
And it's fun. You know, this show is all about catharsis. You know, sometimes I feel better when you talk about stuff. And, you know, Matt Balaker's here. He wrote this book, Greg Giraldo, A Comedian Story. You asked me a bunch of times to be interviewed for it, and I did not. I did not do it. It's a hard thing to talk about.
I can imagine.
You know, Greg was a big part of the comedy scene, and he was a good friend to me, especially early on when I first met him. Greg was hilarious. When I got in trouble once, he
I was hoping you would tell that story.
he acted as my lawyer. And when the roast got hot, he was my 1-2 punch. He went up first. He would open those roasts up, the kickoff, the hardest, the best. Normally it's the easiest spot, but for some reason it was a hard spot because he had to do his own warm up and then do the opening spot, which is a challenge in a roast. You know, people are going to groan if you go too far.
Right.
So he would have to basically warm up the crowd and then do the set that he and Jesse Joyce here would write.
And now on to Larry, the cable guy. This is exciting, I gotta tell you. I've never roasted a fake character before. Maybe next year we can roast SpongeBob SquarePants. You inbred hillbilly. You've been inside more farm animals than Purina. You're like the Trojan army. You're big, patriotic, and you both came inside a giant horse. You gravy-sweating cousin fucker. Larry fucked his first cousin when he was 16, and his last one about an hour ago. You lost 50 pounds on Nutrisystem and another 10 when you shaved your back. How the fuck are you so popular? Jesus fucking Christ. This one finally broke my back. Your fans can't even afford cable. They're not coming because they think you're funny. They've never seen a cable guy. You could have come up with other characters your fans have never seen, like Larry the dentist, or Larry the librarian, or Larry the high school diploma.
Yeah.
How much time would you spend writing those?
Weeks,
roasts?
usually. A couple weeks, for sure. Maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you know?
Right.
Yeah. There's a story in the book, though, actually. The one of them, well, like at first, yeah, it was a lot over text and a lot of, and then we'd get together and like hole up in some hotel. And then the week of the roast, we would like really buckle down and just like, you know, they put you up at if you're from New York, they'll put you up at the Hollywood, the Roosevelt, you know? And so we would just hole up in the Roosevelt for a week and just
write the
just
jokes.
write jokes. Yeah. So that was a blast. But
Greg murdered at all those roasts, really murdered. And we should talk about some of those great roast moments. The writer, Matt, how you doing, Matt?
I'm well. Thanks for having
Congratulations. This book looks great.
Thank you.
It's really good, yeah.
Yeah. How many people did you talk to?
me. 61, and none of them were Jeff Ross. But thanks for having me.
All right. Well, how many of them are helping you promote the fuck?
0. So I'm saying thank you.
Touche.
So I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
I don't think Greg's college friends are promoting it on their...
Have quite the
A few of them
the
retweeted
media
it.
reaching power.
In-house counsel work.
Did you know Greg?
I met him at the Irvine Improv, so no, I didn't know him. And I think met him once at the Melrose Improv. But
You were a fan.
I was a fan.
Have you written books before?
No, not to this length. So this was, I thought it would be, I'll just write a book. I had a job I didn't really want to do, so it was a good side project. And then I connected with Wayne Jones, who was a supporter of the project from Kickstarter, and he had written some books, and we collaborated. And 5 years later, we have a book.
It's really quite an accomplishment, and there's a lot
Thank
to talk about with Greg Giraldo. Here's the foreword by Colin Quinn. I'm going to quote one of my friends and one of my favorite comics of all time who wrote the foreword for Greg Giraldo, a comedian story. Excuse me. Colin writes, "Reading this book has made me happy and sad for a man and a city that no longer exist. A time and place in New York where a guy like Greg Giraldo could grow into what he became. From Francis Lewis Boulevard in Queens to Regis High School to Columbia University to Harvard, he was a success story by anyone's standards. A working class kid who tossed away a big law career to pursue what he was meant to do, stand-up comedy. And Greg excelled in our thing too, a funny, brilliant mind that stood out in a field with a lot of funny, brilliant minds. It's a tragic story, I guess, but not really. It's a wonderful story with a tragic ending. And this book is great because it's a celebration of who and what Greg was." Colin Quinn. Yeah, man. You know, Greg was like fearless. That's how I think about his comedy. Like, he was fearless. He didn't care about offending people. You had to have thick skin if Greg was in the room at a roast or on Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn, which I appeared with him. And just hanging out, you know. Greg was hilarious.
But he put like a lot of thought into it on the back end that you wouldn't see. So it just seems like he was just sort of that he had no boundaries, you know, like, but I just, because I was going to come here, I looked up some old texts between me and him that I have. And I pitched him a joke for the Flavor Flav roast via text that the premise of the joke, or the punchline of the joke just hit Ice-T's wife, Coco, and he like lectured me about how like don't fuck with people's wives if they're not there, like, you know. And so that's what I mean. It's like he said some brutal shit about Ice-T, but then it was like when it came to like Ice-T, it was like, well, she's not a comic and she's not there, so fucking, you know what I mean? So like what I'm saying is like he had a lot of like, he put a lot of thought behind who he was like really aggressive toward.
Yeah, but if he was really on his game, he would have taken the time to invite Ice-T's wife so you could do the joke. That's what I would have done.
Well, thank you for having that much faith in a joke of mine that you don't even know what the punchline was.
No, I just know that, you know, when you got a good one, you got to get that person there.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, but that's like I totally agree with you, but I also like I think that's what one of the things that like made him so great at it was that, you know, it just seems like he was just going for the throat, but like it was really well thought out before he did, you know?
How many roasts did you guys do together?
like 6, I think, maybe. I don't know. Flavor Flav to Hasselhoff, which was his last one. So,
Do you remember any of the Flavor Flav jokes?
Yeah, I
you
did.
guys worked
actually.
on together?
I wrote a bunch of those actually. So that's how I got started with him. Was I had been his opener on the road, and then he was just like kind of offhandedly, like, you know, like, hey, if you have any thoughts, you know, like I'd be happy to. And I was like, to me, it was like an amazing opportunity because I love the roasts, you know, and so I took it really seriously. And I wrote a dozen pages of jokes and gave them to him, and he was like, "Oh shit! Like I didn't think you were gonna fucking actually do it." And then he liked a lot of them, so he used a lot of them. Like so, and then they worked, and so that's how it was. Like the next year, it was kind of a foregone conclusion that we'd work on the Saget one together, you know.
Right.
So, but yeah,
That Flavor Flav one, is that the one that kicked it off?
for me, yeah, that was my first one. Yeah,
My opening joke was, how do you? I don't even want to do this roast of Flavor Flav. How do you even embarrass a crackhead who wears a Viking helmet?
You sent Viking Americans back 1,800 years. Or
Yeah. Thanks, Matt, for remembering that.
very
But I do remember Greg went on and he murdered. And Flavor Flav loved it.
yeah. He was a really good sport
You
about
remember
it. Ice-T also.
You remember some of the jokes from that one?
Yeah, sure. It was.
well, you wrote the Ice-T joke, right?
I
Like
did.
that was not the
It
first step.
The Ice-T is so old. The first thing he bought with his record deal money was his freedom. That was one of the ones I got. It was a different time, by the way. It was a different time. I want to make that clear. But that it was.
It wasn't a different time. It was a different place. It was at a roast.
Yeah.
I actually
it's
saw
fine.
that roast.
And you have to remember, Flavor Flav was on top of the world at the time. He had a hit reality show, and Public Enemy was like resurfacing, and it was a big lifetime achievement kind of moment for Flavor Flav.
Yeah, and then he had this run that like just laid out whoever like Flavor Flav had brought some entourage of dudes that were sitting in the front row, and like when you watch the roast, they're like on the floor because it's this real quick run of what he looks like, and he looks like Idi Amin after a 3-year crack binge on the Sun, and you look like a skeleton wrapped in electrical tape. Like it was just this really rapid fire, a whole bunch of them right in a row. And it was like one of those where he didn't let off the gas, and like I think that's why it was so funny.
That's so great.
He's from
But
my
Carrot Top
hometown.
was there. And, this is another one that I loved. That it was a co-effort because I wrote the less smart version that it ended up being, and he brought like the Harvard genius to this joke that was. Because Carrot Top had so many plastic surgeries or whatever, and then he was like, the fuck did you do to your face? It must have been difficult for you to find a plastic surgeon who could add a chromosome.
Oh my God.
Because I had a version that was like it must have been hard to find a plastic surgeon that could make you look like you have Down syndrome or whatever. But the add a chromosome is like such a smarter version of that. So
He was a smart guy.
yeah.
What do you think was it about? And Matt, you must have some insight having to talk to all his friends. Like, how do you go from being a Harvard lawyer? What was eating at him that he wasn't satisfied? He put all that time and energy to be a lawyer. I mean, one of the most sophisticated jobs that somebody can go after. It takes a long time and then get there
Like
at
the
the
most
highest
financially
level.
stable.
Was he a good student?
Oh yeah, he was a very good student. One of his frat brothers told me in Columbia, he was a good student, but he didn't have to like work super hard to get good grades. So I think some of it might be an instance of you're just good at school, and you're good at school in high school. You're good at school in college. You're good at school, so you do what other smart kids do. You go to law school, in his case, Harvard, and then when you're actually practicing, you're like, damn, this is nothing like my schooling. And he was in an office environment, super bored, and just I think he had this inkling to. Not necessarily to just become a stand-up comedian, but he was a guitar player, and I think he had that performer's mentality at a younger age. At least that's what his girlfriend said.
He was a rocker. He wore boots and a leather jacket on stage, and he had spiked hair.
Yeah.
But he had the mind of this sort of thinker. He was a real philosopher. He could be very cutting, but he also didn't do easy jokes. Like he thought his stuff through. I remember his classic stand-up bit about he would compare letters that soldiers would write home during the Civil War as compared to a more modern day soldier.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Do you know the joke?
I could probably fill in parts of it, but it would be great to hear some of that.
It's also the introduction to.
Oh, you have it right there. Yeah.
I think it'd be.
Matt, read it. Matt, read it.
have
Come
Jussie
on.
You want Matt
Joyce.
to read it? Or?
Yeah, Matt, read it.
Yeah.
Matt, read
Here
it.
you go.
Okay.
You wrote the fucking book. Read it.
All right, now I'm plagiarizing Greg Giraldo. Every day there's a story in the paper about how shitty our schools are, Greg Giraldo tells the crowd. Although he's performed this bit hundreds of times, his delivery comes off as instinctive and unrehearsed. With his right hand gripping the microphone, he pauses for a beat and continues. I read a book. It was filled with letters that soldiers during the Civil War had written to their girlfriends back home. These guys were kids. They were like 14, 15-year-old kids. Most of these guys had never even been to school, but every single letter in the book was incredible. The onlookers go quiet for a moment as Greg alters his voice to mimic an exaggerated 19th century Southern accent. My dearest Hannah, this morning.
My dearest Hannah. Well, how would he do it?
Yeah, he was like, my dearest Hannah, this morning, my rack with the fiery pangs of your absence.
Well done. Laughter builds and quickly spreads throughout the Comedy Works audience. Before letting the chuckle subside, Greg continues, I'll bear with you your cherished memory with me as I battle the forces of tyranny and oppression. Speaking in his natural, slightly raspy New York tone, Greg says, now think about what the typical letter from your average modern-day soldier to his girlfriend back home in, like, New Jersey's got to read like.
Now you know it's coming. The audience would just bust up.
Adopting a New Jersey accent, Greg continues, Dear Marie.
Dear Marie.
It is hot as fuck out here.
It is hot as balls out here. Right?
Yeah.
Applause mixes with laughs, and he resumes. It is hard to fight these sand monkeys with your balls stuck to your legs. It is very, very hot out here because I'm in the desert.
Shut up.
Acknowledging the intentional mispronunciation of desert, the fans reward Greg with an extended applause break. Back in character, Greg punctuates the joke. What else did I want to ask you? Oh, yeah. Don't fuck nobody till I get back. That evening in April 2006, Greg recorded the comedy special Good Day to Cross the River. As a nationally touring, headlining comedian, Greg had the admiration of other comics and a budding fan base. He no longer needed a day job. He was a professional comedian on the ascent with more than a decade of experience. But it didn't start this way.
How did it start?
In Queens. Well, did you meet his parents?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, not his dad. His dad was already dead, but I knew his mom. She was a little Spanish lady. Wait, was her mom?
Dolores.
Yeah, she was from Spain, and his dad was Colombian, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
And
if
it was, they're Flushing, Queens. He didn't speak English till he was 4.
I spent a night in his parents' basement once.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we were getting ready to go. We had to be in court. In
Oh, that was
Queens
because of
early
the
next
lawsuit
morning.
or whatever. The traffic ticket or whatever it
Yeah,
was.
I never got to see anybody. He kept me down in the basement. He still had one foot in law and one foot in comedy at that point.
Right.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it wasn't as if he left his firm job and then he's instantly a professional comedian.
You know-
It was pretty fast, but he worked for a buddy of his from Colombia, and he also worked for a sort of an internet startup. It was a tourism company called RestQuest.
That's like a thing I actually like tell like younger comics all the time is that every young open mic or younger comic has this fantasy in their head that there's a day they get to go in and tell their boss to go fuck themselves, and that is never how it actually works. Like you don't realize you're a full-time professional comic for a year.
Right.
Where suddenly you look back and you're like, oh, I didn't have to fucking move anybody's couch for extra money for a whole year. Like, I guess that means I'm a working comedian now.
Right,
like,
'cause
but
you
it's
still
not a
keep
thing
the-
at the time you're aware of.
Because you keep those options open.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like, I may need to move some people's couches if I don't get any gigs.
Right, because
then
gigs
eventually
wouldn't get booked a year in advance.
Right,
They'd get booked
yeah.
a day or two in
Yeah.
advance, when you're at that level.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Greg was funny right from the start. We became friends. I just feel like just chit-chatting maybe at one of the clubs, and I did a college. I was writing on an MTV show, Red Johnny and the Round Guy, and they would often take me out as their opening act. And we were at a college on Long Island.
Crib.
And,
You just say crib when someone says a place that you're from.
Oh.
It's like a, A black thing.
Yeah,
And
I say it too.
and it was a kid with who flashed a gun when I was on stage, and it made me nervous. And I wanted to tell somebody, so I might have mentioned it to a student or something. You know, I made a joke, and he like flashed the gun to try to intimidate me, and he was kind of giggling. And I guess I told somebody, and then Red Johnny and the Round Guy were on stage. They were a big college act. They would do like an hour. John DiMaggio and Tim and they had this amazing sort of hip hop comedy sketch tour de force. They would just murder. And after the show, this kid comes up to me and he goes, "Oh, look, this is the gun," and I see it, and it's clearly a toy that he was just messing with me with. So as a joke, he hands it to me, and I went up to Red Johnny, John DiMaggio. You know, John, he does the voice of Bender on Futurama and about literally 1,000 other cartoons. But back then, he was just one half of Red Johnny and the Round Guy, or should I say 2/3, because he's giant. And as a joke, I just came up behind him, and I put the gun to his head, and I gave him a hug and said, "You guys were terrible. I want my money back." And by the time I got to the end of the sentence, I was on the floor cuffed with a gun in my head.
Oh, shit.
Because
Oh, my God.
when I told whoever, another student or someone, you know, in that hour that Red Johnny and that I came off stage and the other guys were on stage, they alerted campus cops, who then alerted the local cops that there was a gun, and they didn't want to stop the show because that could incite a riot. So they were being cautious, and suddenly the whole perimeter of the place was cops.
Damn.
And they didn't know one guy from another at that point. I'd already been off stage almost an hour. So now this local cop has this gun in my head because he saw me put a gun to Red Johnny's head. And Johnny was laughing at first. We thought it was a joke. And I knew it wasn't a joke. I was pinned down, my face on the ground, handcuffed. They arrested me, took me in. The whole audience
Oh
is
my
watching this.
God.
I'm just the opening act at this college
Holy
gig.
shit.
My agent manager, Jason Steinberg, accompanied me to jail for a few hours. He sat there while I was cuffed to a desk and processed. And the whole way there, in the cop car, the cops who actually drove me to police station were laughing hysterically because they were making overtime for this ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
And they did confide in me that the cop who pulled the gun, who drew so quickly, should not have done that. Should have seen what was happening. And they said that he was also already transferred or fired from the NYPD out to Long Island for doing something similar.
Wow.
He was just too jumpy.
You're lucky to get shot.
Right.
He's lucky he didn't have his blackface on.
Yeah.
He took it off.
And that was my closer. I was only opening, so I didn't have to do that bit. But after a few hours, they let me out, and I was like, "Oh man, what a bummer! I don't know if I'm in trouble or what." And of course, I needed some legal help, and I had very little money and no really understanding of how any of it worked. And when you're that young, you're just thinking about your next gig, your next meal. He really didn't want to be bothered. And Greg said, "I'll help you." And it was sort of his way of ingratiating himself into the scene a little bit. He was really still very much a rookie. Yeah. And it was such an incredibly generous gesture on his part. At least that's how I saw it. Maybe it was a little irresponsible of me to not really. I mean, he just seemed like such a straight up smart guy. So I was like, please help me. And I stayed over his house in Queens and then went to Queens or Long Island in the morning for that court appointment, and nothing quite happened. And I had to go back. And Greg said that he had added another lawyer. At least that's what Ed discovered today when he was researching Greg's version of the story online. But my recollection is it took Greg 2 tries, and that he was brilliant.
Uh-huh.
And when he told the story, he would underplay it. But my very clear recollection is that Greg dazzled this local courtroom somehow got it all dismissed.
That's crazy because like I've heard the story from Greg. I was aware of this thing, but I didn't know what it was. The graphic detail of what it was about is fucking hilarious. I didn't realize that. I thought you got like a traffic. He was like, "Oh, you got in some trouble on Long Island." Like I don't remember him like explaining to me how fucking crazy that was.
I mean,
That's really
when a police officer draws their pistol, they can't just let me go. It becomes a huge amount of paperwork.
Sure, yeah.
For a cop draws their gun, that becomes something else. That's
Right.
not just something they can go on. Never mind, go home. So now they have to do all the paperwork, and they didn't want to make this cop look bad, so they had to charge me with something. They charged me with inciting a riot, which in fact, of course, that didn't happen. Everyone saw was laughing, and the only thing that might have caused a riot was this cop pulling an actual gun on someone's head.
Right. Yeah, that might.
Instead of me putting a toy gun on my comedy buddy.
Wow.
So anyway, I did 30 years, and here I am. Thanks, Greg.
How many hours were you in lockup?
It was probably maybe 2 or 3 hours.
Oh, what's
and they really just handcuffed me to a desk. It was
like college jail?
No. It was a real jail.
Oh, okay.
It was a real police station.
Do you
I
bring
don't
this
know what
up when you
college
do
jail
your
is, though.
prison shows?
I did not bring this one up because I didn't want to get ass raped.
You've been here before. You know what it is.
No, I'm just saying, like, this is on the scale of jail of offenses. This was not.
Yeah. Hey, you guys want to hear a crazy story? Then you tell you're fucking cute.
How crazy is it?
Yeah.
So
I cut my wife's head off, sir. I'm not.
You gotta lie.
I'm not
if you were in
impressed
jail
with your
for
story.
Pulling a fake gun.
So the whole Melissa Rivers thing. For some reason, that reminded me. Were there any other instances of people that just took jokes during the roast? They took them the wrong way, and you had to like kind of smooth things over.
Well, Jeff can, I'm sure, answer that. Like,
I don't know, but all I'm saying is that from that moment on, like Greg, like I understood that he was very special. Like he had a special mind and
heart.
We weren't the best of friends. We were friends. We were also maybe competitive, probably more than we would admit at the time because we were both going on the same show. So we were castmates competitive.
Yeah.
Not like competitive the way two opposing sides would be. We were, on the same show.
right.
So you want the show to be great. And I produced those shows, those Comedy Central roasts.
Yeah.
So the way for the roast to run out of gas would be for one person to be funny and the rest of the show suck.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the one funny guy on an unfunny show.
Right.
That wouldn't get me anywhere. So you had to recruit the funniest motherfuckers you could find, and then that's, Greg was Comedy Central always wanted him, and of course it was like it made me look good because I'd been doing those roasts for years already at the Friars Club and charity events, and now they were on TV to really up it a notch. I remember one time Greg told me that he roasted Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
And that was one of the few Comedy Central Friars Club roasts that I wasn't on. And it didn't go well by all accounts. Everybody said it was really a bad roast and Chevy didn't have fun and was a bad sport or whatever. I never actually watched it, but I've heard this from a lot of people. And I remember it was the one year they didn't hire me as a producer. So I was like, oh, man, that sucks. So I felt bad because I love the brand. I love the roasts. It wasn't like I was happy that they had a bad one. I was already kind of moving on to my own thing at MTV and stuff like that. I was like, I wanted to see everybody do well. Mark Maron, Todd Barry, they were all in this roast. And Steve
Colbert.
And all these really funny people, Paul Schaefer, the musician who I love, who were all on this roast. Now, I didn't really know Chevy, but...
Well, neither did anyone else there.
Right. That was the whole thing, that his friends weren't really there. Well, there were a few friends there, and they could have made it work if he was a good sport. They could have been full
Like
of
Lorraine Newman
camaraderie.
was there or something, I think.
But I remember Greg saying, I said, well, what was Chevy like before the show? And Greg said, well, I didn't meet him before the show.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, well, that's the problem. That's at least part of the problem.
Right.
With a roast is you got to have I tend to host a dinner the night before or, so that everyone has some eye-to-eye, face-to-face,
Sure.
person-to-person contact before you call them all kinds of names
Right.
on a national stage. So I feel like not that they invited me, but I let them down on that one because that one should have gone a lot better for Greg.
Right.
But after that, there was this whole resurgence when Joel Gallen started producing them, and then we roasted Pam Anderson. I think that's where when Greg and I both sort of came into another level.
Right.
We're roasting for Bloodsport. Now it was the big game. It was much more rock and roll, if you will. We had people like Tommy Lee up on the dais, and
Andy Dick was there.
Andy Dick was
Courtney
there.
Love. was
Courtney
hilarious.
Love. Yeah, shoot that. So it became a much more punk rock version of the roast than the Friars Club had ever imagined. It's about the time I started getting shit from the old guard, going, "You're too much. You're going way too far. It shouldn't be on TV. It's too balls out. There's not enough respect." And I was like,
No civility. Yeah.
I was like, I don't know, kind of like it. It's what the
Yeah.
people want. Let's
Yeah.
roast David Hasselhoff. Let's roast Pam Anderson. Let's roast Flava Flav. Let's roast, those kinds of people.
I think they were just mad it was too loud.
Maybe.
They're like, it's just,
And that
they don't like
roast,
flash pots, old men.
it helped the animals. Joel Gallen organized was at a lunch with Pam Anderson and someone from PETA. So instead of doing like a more buttoned up fundraiser, that was the event.
I wore a full-length fur coat. I said, it's a benefit for PETA, right? Doesn't that stand for people who eat and torture animals? That's when Courtney Love threw ice at me. And
Did you catch it?
I didn't, and she was all jacked up on whatever Andy Dick gave her in the men's room. And she kept like lifting her shirt and humping the couch and running around half naked and interrupting everybody. And finally I said, Courtney Love, you're like the girl next door if you happen to live next door to a methadone clinic. How is it possible that Courtney Love looks worse than Kurt Cobain?
She had a hard life.
But Greg, once again, I believe, kicked that roast off.
Yeah.
Do you remember some of
I
the...
mean, I that was the one before I started working with them on.
So then, you know what?
So,
Let's let the man do it himself. Let's hear a little clip of Greg Giraldo roasting Pam Anderson. Legendary. So you could see right there his mind and Matt, to write the book about somebody, what was it about Greg Giraldo's comedy that made you want to write this book?
I didn't know much about him.
Right.
And I think that was a big part of it. And then growing, I lived in Westwood when Michael Jackson died, and all these celebrities die, and there's these big outpourings of emotion. And I always kind of like, why would someone cry when someone you don't know passed? And then when Greg Giraldo died, I bawled like a baby, and it was the first time, and I was like kind of mad at myself too. I was like, I didn't know him, but he was so fun to watch. And there was like this kind of mystery about his backstory. And then I had to get a legitimate job when my wife was pregnant with our second. And I went on Amazon to try to read about him, and there was nothing.
Wow.
So that was sort of the impetus.
Mm-hmm. That's great, man. I'm really glad you did this.
Thank you. And it was
what did you
only
learn?
took 5 years.
What was surprising? What'd you learn about him that you
lots.
were like, what?
Probably the biggest surprise is he apparently suffered from something called the imposter syndrome, and it's something that therapists diagnose, but it effectively means like you always think you're a failure or a fake. So it's different from being a perfectionist where you have this super high standard and you never reach it. These people have a super high standard, and even when they do a great job, they think they never reach it.
It's
so
like the opposite of what Donald Trump is.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like
No, exactly.
he is
Yeah.
a fake
Needs a little
and thinks
imposter
he's the most
syndrome.
deserving person. Like, yeah, Greg Giraldo was like on paper, and in reality, like he was the most deserving, successful, like straight A Harvard student, and he thought the whole time that he was like a fraud. Like
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, like one of his
what a
buddies
shame.
said he thought he got into Harvard just like as an affirmative action thing, and like it almost sounded like a joke. He thought he was like messing with, and then he's like, no, like you deserve to be there, but I think when people have that, there's no convincing someone's going to do. I mean, you have to go to therapy or something. It's a really
Right.
I mean, that was surprising because it was like you said, Jesse, he had everything.
Did you think that added to his addictions and his demons, the things that eventually killed him?
That was another thing we learned. Like the woman who's the psychologist at the Laugh Factory suggests that he didn't do drugs. I mean,
Just to clarify,
Yeah,
They do give-
thank you for clarifying.
the
that.
Laugh
sorry.
Factory offers free mental
you,
health
sorry.
counseling for comedians, which is an incredibly kind gesture on the part of Jamie Masada.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
The podiatrist over at the Comedy Store.
Yeah. What? He actually charges an arm and a leg.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, her summary was he was sad and depressed, and that's why he took drugs. It wasn't like he took drugs and that made him sad. So there's something she suggests internally that he was always battling.
Yeah, when he would relapse, like, cause like the reason we started doing the road together was because we both got sober within a month of each other, and
So you knew each other a little bit before?
yeah, like we would get drunk periodically. Like I'd see him, and like I always knew he was like a reliable guy to like, like you kind of see through the matrix with other alcoholics, like in the sense that it's like that guy's gonna be able to hang with me till we get kicked out of here, like. Because a lot of times, like it's like you go out with some dude and then it's like 10 o'clock and they're like, "Oh, I gotta go home to my wife," and it's like, "Oh, what the fuck are we doing?" Even like
Right.
when I was a drunk.
Why are we even
But
drinking?
yeah, but like
You,
I would
needed
see-
a partner in crime.
Right, but I would see Greg and go like, great, like we're in for the night. But I didn't feel like I knew him, But it was also because we were both managed by Dorfman at the time, Rick Dorfman. And so I didn't know that about Greg because I only saw him like every 6 months or whatever. But he was like, "Oh, hey, Greg got sober." But Greg was always like one of my favorite comics, like of all time. When I was like an open micer, even I used to think he was fucking amazing. And then he was like, "Well, why don't you go?" We both got sober within a month, and he was like, "Well, how about you guys go on the road together and keep each other out of trouble?" Which to me was like such a fucking cool, where it was like I was suddenly gonna get to like work with Mickey Mantle every night, in my opinion, and
Right.
and so. I would, so that was part of it. Was like we tried to help keep each other sober, and anyway, long story short is like that. Toward the end there, when he would like start relapsing more often, he would just like it would be a spiraling thing where he'd get mad at himself because he relapsed, and then he was like all pissed at that, and then he was like, "Well, fuck it, what's the point?" Like it would just keep, And it was like an argument we'd have all the time where it was like, why can't you be, because for me, I've been sober for 13 and a half years now.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. But the point being that, thanks, is that like I hang my hat on what a douchebag I used to be. Like, I think that's a cool aspect of my young life is like that I used to kind of live like a pirate, but I don't anymore. But and I'm proud of that. I think that's cool. So like
Right.
that's what I could never get him to see it that way. It's like, why can't you like
Enjoy the process.
think it's so cool that you one time like got to fucking get drunk and shoot a machine gun in the woods with Pantera. Like that's a cool story, but you don't have to keep doing that because you're in your 40s now.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like that's the thing is that he was never like he couldn't get it in the past. It was Like, why you keep making more of these fucking stories, you know?
So even having a family and he has 3 sons,
Yeah.
nothing really sort of slammed him into sobriety.
Well, that was like his biggest struggle was with the kids, you know? Like, I mean, that was like the thing that he was like constantly, he beat himself up over that. And that would like, that's why it kind of kept spiraling out of control is like, so for example, like, you know, for example, like it was like we'd go to Columbus to the Funny Bone or whatever. And then I get a text from, his wife who's like, I'm bringing the kids to the airport to make sure that he gets on the plane. You know what I mean? Like to kind of, you know, sort of force him to like, my kids will be there. If I don't get off that plane, they'll know that, like, you know, I've let them down. You know what I mean? Which I thought was like, yeah, that might work, you know, that kind of thing when he was sort of, but then he would miss the plane and then he'd sober up for a minute and be like, fuck, now I missed the flight. Like now my kids, like I've let my kids down. And then it would like
Make him
Get worse.
yeah, and then it would get, you know what I mean? So
Build.
it was like this kind of like sort of spiral of, you know, where he couldn't kind of pop out of it. You know what I mean?
I wonder how those guys are doing now.
The kids, they're great.
Yeah.
Like I talk to Greg Jr. Not often, but like we text like he's on his way to college. Which is crazy.
Great.
Yeah. So and
I met
Daniel and
those-
Lucas are doing great too.
Met those
They're
guys a few times over
in
the
high school.
years.
Yeah. So yeah, they're awesome. Like especially when right after he died, like I kind of like stepped in as like a, you know, doofus uncle kind of a thing, you know, and so like I would take them out like, you know, like a couple of, like once a month or whatever to get pizza and hang with them and shit. And they thought it was fun because they could say "fuck" in my car, you know? Because they were like 6 and 8, and you know.
Uncle
so,
Jesse's always gonna be cool.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but they're a big part of the reason why I became a dad, you know, like because those kids were so great, and like you know I was in my 20s, and you know, so it was neat.
Beautiful, Jesse. That's
Anyway.
beautiful.
Thanks.
That was a tough time. I remember.
Yeah.
I was. That funeral was a real heartbreaker in New York City.
I mean, it was pretty funny though too. I remember vividly. This is when I don't mean to like commit.
Sure.
It was right. You had this great. Okay,
Oh, no.
so we were at the funeral, and it was this time where like I feel like a lot of comics, especially if you're like an edgier comic, you've had at least one experience with this in your life where you're talking to somebody who gets it, who's like
Right.
appreciates, and then you then immediately shift to talk to somebody who's like a normal person, and
Yeah.
you don't shift gears fast enough.
Yeah.
And
No,
I
yeah.
was with you and Tal and a couple other, and Colin and a few others, and there was this shitty little closet that we were leaning up against, and the timing of this was so great because
Before the funeral or after?
it was during the funeral. It was like his casket was right there, right? It was
Right.
in the viewing, right?
Right.
And
Oh, jeez.
Robert Schimmel had died in a car accident like 3 weeks before, so
Yeah.
it was like the second one in
Right.
very short.
Right.
And you were like, you said something to the effect of like, "Oh yeah, Schimmel's funeral, Schimmel's viewing is in his closet," or whatever. It was hilarious. However you said it. I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing it, not, but dude, it floored me. It like laid me the fuck out because like we all needed and we were all doing that, like making this like sort of irreverent shit about like you know other comics that died and stuff at
Yeah.
the same time. And then his sister came over and said something to me, and I immediately like, bam, like I fucking smashed her with a joke. And I was
I
like,
heard you
oh
smashed
shit, like I fucking. I didn't switch. Like, so anyway, she's fine. She's great. But like, I have always remembered like how uncomfortable it was to then turn to be talking to a group of like comic geniuses doing roasty shit and then turning to a family member and then like trying to like roast her dead brother in front of her. It really ain't shit, that joke. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, if nothing, I certainly kill at funerals. and I do feel like, you know, there is that. You know, it's a cult. You know, you're talking to comedians. It's totally different than talking to civilians.
Yeah.
You know, and we do look to each other to sort of break through the ice and cut through stuff. And that's one of the reasons I do this show. I like to, you know, laugh through the pain.
Get through stuff together.
Laugh through the pain. I remember having dinner with Sarah Silverman and Chris Rock after the funeral. We went to a Italian place downtown. We were just looking to just not be by ourselves, I guess.
Yeah.
And Chris was just going on and on and on about how you know, a rule of comedy should never be should always be don't go home, don't stay in the hotel on a local gig.
Yeah.
You know, Greg died in New Jersey.
Yeah, at the
only about
Stress
25
Factory.
miles from home. He was performing in New Jersey at the Stress Factory, and he, stayed over when he could have gone home for the night and come back the next day.
And you know what? The last 3 times he'd done that gig, it was me and him, and we drove down together and came back. And then this time, because it was my birthday, I was headlining in Montreal, and it was like a big deal because I was kind of just starting to headline more, and so I was wasn't there. And I'm not saying I don't have any survivor's guilt or anything, I don't think. But at the same time, there's a small part of me that's if he didn't get his shit under control, he was gonna die because it was the way his life was headed. But so I don't necessarily think it would have happened that weekend if I had not had that gig and open for him, because he would have just ridden with me.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, we always try to look back at those things, and one of the last times I hung out with him was in Bonnaroo, and we had a fucking blast.
Yeah.
We were partying. I wasn't the one to lecture him. He wasn't going to listen to me.
Right.
I was there anyway, on a rare sort of binge balls out summer rock concert, hip-hop concert. We watched Jay-Z and Stevie Wonder together. Huh. And he was having a blast, man. He really was. And so my final memories are happy ones. And he closed that roast. Was it Hasselhoff?
Yeah.
Was that his last one?
Yeah, that was the last one. Yeah.
He closed that. He was right. Am I remembering this?
Yeah. That was the one where he kind of made a thing about I'm tired of opening these, and so they had Greg close it.
Which is so dumb. Opening is the best spot.
But
most people watching,
But in his head, it was also it was always the same jokes about him, about how he's a failure and all this stuff. And
I
he's never,
see.
And so he was I think that's what everybody thinks of me is I'm just the opener in this roast. And he
That's
wanted
so
to close
sad
it.
because, the best comics in the world open roasts. That's the thing. Is
the other.
You want somebody who's gonna slap people across the face, put them in the mood, break the ice, set the tone, and Greg would really do that.
I remember that from you guys and the other writers. That everybody was always annoyed with Greg, and then by proxy me as well, because we'd get first crack at burning all.
I wouldn't even let you hear my material.
No, yeah, I remember that. You kicked me out of the cellar once.
Yeah. You were Greg's writing partner.
Yeah.
And I was going to practice my stuff, and you.
Yeah.
You came down.
Well, I had a spot. You
Okay.
bumped me. That was the real gall of that for me. Is that I had a spot. You bumped me to do your shit and then kicked me out of the room.
You were offended, right?
No, I was not. Well, I thought it was weird because I was obviously I'd never steal your shit,
Right.
But then I called Greg, and I think Greg got mad on my behalf. Was that's not okay. Didn't he call you or something?
No. What I remember is saying you asked him about it, and he explained to you why I might not want you.
Oh, is that how it went? It might have very well been.
That was my
how it went.
recollection.
Okay. Huh. All I remember was being. No, here's the thing. All I remember was being annoyed that it was because I was such a fan of the roast, and I was such a fan of the jokes, and
Right. You wanted to hear
and
them.
and it was it was my turn to go up, and then I don't care if a
wanted a
bigger comic
preview.
bumps me, that's totally fine. But I was no, because you know how the day of the roast, at least for me, it was always so much fun because I was working just with Greg in this sort of in our own little capsule, and then you get there and you get to see who cracked the code. You know what I mean? There's this joke that's been kicking around in your head for weeks.
Right.
The pieces are there. You know that you have to connect Gary Busey to a fucking horse, and you know that you have to do that, and it's but you actually crack it, and then you get to see somebody else did, and you're fuck, that's the way to do that joke. You know what I mean? That was always my favorite, and so I just loved getting a preview of what everybody was doing because I love to see who's cracked the code on. Whatever, Joan Rivers' pussy or whatever, you know what I mean? So, yeah. Anyway.
I just didn't want you to hear my jokes and have Greg crack the same code right before I go on.
I'm not, and Greg, anyway, it's fine. We're past it now, Jeff.
And for me, it was never about taking the jokes. It's your ways in, your ideas. You want, when I go up there, I want everyone in the room to be hearing it for the first time.
Sure.
So I get like that crack.
Right.
You know, it's my own self-consciousness and my own desire to also kill.
Right.
And in a much harder spot. I would normally be going on at the end.
Well, right. And that's why I was saying it's like all the rest of you guys had to be kind of annoyed that like we would get first crack at every.
But he would destroy me every time. To quote Greg Giraldo, Jeff Ross, how fat are you gonna fucking get? At a certain point, he wouldn't even put it in joke form. He would just ask me blunt questions like that.
Oh fuck! There was one. It was. I can't remember what it was, but it was something where it was like an adverb, and the punchline was it was like. You're doing this the way Jeff Ross is fatting. And it was the fact that I wish I could remember. Fuck, I don't remember what I'm not going to think of it. I'm sorry. But
Which roast was it?
I don't even remember that. But I remember it being a lot of fun when we would get to you. Like, it was always fun because to try to have to figure out new ways to say that you're fat and bald or whatever, you know? So, or you weren't bald at the time, but yeah, fuck. That was fun.
All right, well, fuck you and Greg Giraldo. I can't wait to tear through this book, man. It looks so cool.
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
It's on Amazon. It's called Greg Giraldo, A Comedian Story. The forward by Colin Quinn. Lots of fun pictures. There's one of me and Greg at the David Hasselhoff roast. There's ones of Dave Attell in here. Bunch of comedians. And you talk to 60 friends and family.
Wow, 61.
We see this here.
That's right. You remembered that from the beginning.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Very attentive.
I can't wait to pour through this, man.
Thank you.
What should people know about Greg that they don't know, Matt?
That he was a willing and gracious mentor. I mean, I think Jussie experienced that.
Yeah, he was totally my mentor for sure. And he was also the smartest guy I've ever met in my life. Like, you know, I've said this before, but we'd be on the road together a lot, and we'd like rent a car and we'd drive it. It was like being in the car with Wikipedia because I could just like he's like better than the podcast because like I'm like a real curious guy and I love history and I'm just interested. Like, so we'd just be driving and I'd go like, hey dude, what was the Spanish American War all about? And he would just like, oh, well, you see, Jess, like what happened was yellow journalism. And he'd just go into it. And I would be like, I'd be an expert when I got out of the car about what the Spanish American War was all about. Like that was like so cool to me to have access to this dude that was basically just like knew, it seems like he knew everything. And you could just kind of like, yeah.
Could you imagine him now in the podcast generation, in the way the roasts have grown and the way he would have talked about politics and all the ridiculous social outrage of everything. Yeah. You know, he would have been.
Oh yeah, I think about him daily with Trump. Like it would be so great to hear, and the Kavanaugh hearing. I'm sure he would have had great shit about that. Like anyway. He sent me this text a long time ago, and I just thought it was it was like, it's kind of quintessentially Greg, because he's simultaneously, he's being a smarty pants and being a dick to you at the same time. It was like one of the early roasts. I don't remember which roast it was, but I had written him something about like who's on the dais or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But I didn't know how to spell dais, and I spelled it D-E-U-S, like the way you spell God in Latin, you know? And so he goes, dais? Did you mean dais? You're not very sophisticated. If you're going to start doing corporates, you're going to have to learn how to spell the word dais. And then he followed up with a second text right away. Very odd to see a mastery of Latin pronunciation coexisting with such an ignorance of formal seating arrangements. I just thought that was such a witheringly funny. I remember I was in the grocery store. I was in line when I got that, and I felt like such a douche. I was like, oh, I should have known better.
Oh, that's so great. What a mind. What a great mind he had. So one way we like to end the show is to pay tribute to somebody we lost. So let's all join hands. It's time for Roast in Peace. Greg Giraldo, who's been gone for how many years now, Matt?
9.
9 years. We miss this guy. Every comedian at some point dies in New Jersey. Greg just took it to the next level. Greg was a lawyer that always wore a leather jacket. He looked like the true life version of my cousin Vinny. Greg had a sitcom called Common Law that was based on his life, but he still wasn't right for the part. After 2 trips to Long Island, the charges got dropped when I got in trouble. But not till I dropped Greg as my lawyer. Greg was the best lawyer no money could buy. At his last roast, Greg sat by Hulk Hogan and David Hasselhoff, and Greg died of an overdose a month and a half later, proving that maybe God does only take the good ones. Greg's parents were Latino, which means Greg must have been very smart, since they didn't have the money to bribe his way into Harvard. Greg was a lawyer, and he gave up a career in law to be a comedian. That's amazing, especially since most people give up a career as an Uber driver to be a comedian. Greg's last roast was the David Hasselhoff roast, so I'm happy that Greg's last wish came true. He got to meet Hulk Hogan. Oh, boy. At least Greg Giraldo went out with dignity, or whatever she called herself at the strip club. Greg Giraldo, we really miss you, man. I think about you all the time. Roast in peace. Thanks, Matt. Was that cathartic for you? That's good, man.
Thanks for coming by,
it means
guys.
a lot that you guys came by. Matt, on behalf of whatever comedians I can speak for, my crew, the roast world, it really means a lot that you included so much of Greg's roast comedy, and that you talked to all the people at the Comedy Cellar, because he really was a big part of my class, if you will. He really was, and you did a lot of good research here. And Jesse, man, I'm so happy that you are doing so well. You are you took that jump start that Dorfman suggested and Greg gave you, and you made a whole life out of it. So it's really amazing.
Part of that too. So thanks.
Well, say that into the microphone, for crying out
Oh,
loud.
are we still on? I thought we were off now.
Okay, R. Kelly.
I thought we were.
Jesus.
I thought, like, did you say roast in peace? You gave it so much fucking gravitas when you said roast in peace. I was like, oh, okay, now like music kicks in the podcast.
No, we gotta.
So we're still on
shitty
fucking
plugs.
air?
Yeah.
Jesus. Somebody let me know that.
He put his gum back
Anyway,
in his mouth. He
yeah,
was
I
like
have gum in my
relaxing.
mouth now. I really thought we were done. But
know.
but no, for real. Like you saw that, like, like I felt kind of lost, obviously. Like Greg was like, such a huge, she was like a big brother to me or whatever. And then like the fact that you were the first of his class to like reach out to me, and I thought that was like really cool. And then like, cause you did it, like Attell did it, and Tom Papa, like a couple other dudes did. And I was like, and Gaffigan, I was like, that's really nice of these guys, or whatever. But you specifically like took a real like, seemingly like, guardianship of me then after Greg died. And I thought that was like really cool. And the fact that you invited me to roast and then you invited me to, work on your show, like it was just such a cool. Anyway, so I'm very grateful to that.
I was
you for
happy.
that.
Always feel lucky to have you on those teams, and for you to be working for my pal Jimmy now, and I'm sure you're going to go on to do a million other things in your career. And
Thanks, man.
Great to have you as a friend, buddy. Thanks for
dude.
coming.
You too.
Jasmine, thanks for coming.
Oh, I have actually something to say.
Yeah.
What's that?
Okay, guys, I'm going to be in Philadelphia. I'm bringing the cool kids.
All right, we're out of time. Cool Kids of Comedy in
Cool
Philly.
Kids of Comedy in Philly at Ravens Lounge, April 20th. Tickets are now on sale on Eventbrite. You can get them from my website, www.jasmineleigh.com, JasmineLeigh.com.
You've said
That's
everything
awesome.
but the date.
Oh, I said April 20th, 420.
420 show?
I know, but you can't smoke in Philadelphia, but still
You
come
can
out.
smoke in Philadelphia.
Is it legal?
No, but they smoke in
I
Philadelphia.
mean, I'm a smoke in Philadelphia either way. But
How else are you supposed to cure Tom Hanks?
yeah, but come through to that, guys.
They don't smoke. They're too angry at people. Like you can tell that they
I
don't.
like Philly.
So
They are
they're
angry.
They
furious.
like that.
There's a
nice.
jail in the
There was-
stadium.
There was that fucking robot, the friendly robot that just went around the country hitchhiking and shaking hands with people, and then it got beaten to death in
That's
Philadelphia.
right.
Yeah, it made it all the way across the country, and then Philadelphia cut its head off.
I don't know.
Brotherly love. They threw batteries at Santa Claus, so
yeah,
be
that's
careful.
true.
Oh, God. Okay, well, don't do any of that at my show, please, guys.
You can cut this out if you want, but I think this is like kind of a funny like inside thing with Greg that I thought was. I've cherished this for years, right? This was one of the roasts. Actually, because you were the other sort of like, titan of the roasts, I wonder if you got this email too. So one of the roasts, like in the lead up, it was like the week of, our agent got an email, like an unsolicited email directed to Greg from an Austrian comedy writer. Did you ever get this? No. Holy fuck. I've enjoyed this for so long. So can I just read it to you?
Yes,
I'm going to not say the guy's name, but hi, I am 26 years old. I live in Vienna, Austria, where I write for German and Austrian television and satire magazines, and I would like to know if you, Greg Giraldo, is searching for punchline writers. I will enclose some lines in case you like the style. I would be glad to hear from you. Greetings! Like he closes the thing with greetings. Okay, so this is a couple examples of his jokes. I bought Viagra on the net, but it was fake and cut with baking powder, so my penis didn't become stiff and hard, but at least brown and crunchy.
Wow.
Like, it's... We laughed so fucking hard at this. My new girlfriend says she likes dirty sex, so since 3 months I'm using the same condom. That's exactly...
That's gross.
Since
3 months.
Like, to take such a fucking wild swing at, like, I'm going to write to, like, one of the dudes on the roast and, like, see if he wants any of these. And, like, when you clearly don't even have, like, a real mastery of English, you know what I mean? It was, like, it was ballsy for him to do that.
I think he's ballsy. Let's hear another.
Right.
Clearly,
you want to hear more? Okay, here's another one. Okay. Where's the... There it is. In Germany, someone ordered... in the German army, someone ordered the wrong color, and now their camouflage suits are completely pink. If you ask me, I don't think it was a mistake. I think the Germans are planning to invade San Francisco.
That was a good one.
It's not that structure.
Yeah.
I drink vodka.
I love that accent, though. And
In Germany, in Austria, they don't go, hey-oh.
Yeah.
They go, Hail Hitler.
I drink vodka for breakfast, and I don't have a job since the last millennium. Sometimes I think my wife is only still married with me because she is lying in a coma since 8 years. Anyway, we laughed so hard at that, and then that particular phraseology of since 6 months, that became like a thing we would say all the time to each other. So it would be like, and we'd forget too. Like Greg would be like, "When was the last time we were at this club?" And I'd be like, "Since 4 months." You know? It was the funniest fucking. It was like a running joke with us for years because this dude's email. Holy shit. Anyway,
That's hilarious.
so I just thought you guys would find that entertaining.
That was great. Thank you.
You gotta hire him. Reach out to him.
how long ago was that? Is he still?
Don't forget to pick up the Greg Giraldo, A Comedian Story on Amazon. Congratulations, Matt Balaker.
Thank you.
Send Jesse Joyce some diapers. He's got a new baby coming.
Send us all some diapers, right? We can all use them.
What's your Twitter, Jesse?
Just at Jesse Joyce, JESSEJOYCE.
Great.
Beautiful, beautiful.
What else, Ed?
You got some dates coming up. You got a solo gig at the La Jolla Comedy Store. That's May 10th and 11th.
That'll be fun.
Bumping Mike's starting a big tour. They're going to add more dates, but right now we're looking at May 24th and May 25th.
Yeah.
At the Memorial Day weekend, Bethlehem and Atlantic City, the Borgata and the Sands. June 14th, you're doing Bumping Mike's at the Morongo Casino. I've never been there.
That's out here in California. That'll be fun.
Yeah. Cabazon. It's close to Palm Springs. And then on October 4th, day before my birthday, Huntington, New York, Paramount Theater.
Those shows are going to sell out quick. That's Dave's territory right there.
Yeah.
I might be in New York for that.
That'd be a fun one.
Hell yeah. And then you're bringing Roast Battle to Clusterfest on June 21st. It's the Friday night at Clusterfest.
That's gonna be really fun. Clusterfest up in San Francisco.
Yeah.
June 21st. So we're gonna do big arena roast battle. I think Anthony Jeselnik's gonna judge with me.
Fuck yeah.
And oh man, that's gonna be fun.
All right.
Cool.
Rate and review us on iTunes. Check us out on Spotify. Email us with any comments, questions, just to say hello. Tell us you like the show. Shit, tell me to go fuck myself. thickskinwithjeffross at Gmail. Instagram, thickskinwithjeffross. Twitter, thickskincast. That's about all she wrote, baby.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks for listening. to the podcast, my emotional support people. And life is hard, but we're getting through it together. And let's let Greg take us out.
Let's face it, our reading and writing skills in our country, every day there's a story in the paper about how shitty our schools are. They just keep getting worse all the time. I read a book, it was filled with letters that soldiers during the Civil War had written to their girlfriends back home. These guys were kids. They were 14, 15-year-old kids. Most of these guys had never even been to school, but every single letter in the book was incredible. Every single letter was like, "My dearest Hannah, this morn finds me racked by the fiery pangs of your absence. I'll bear your cherished memory with me as I battle the forces of tyranny and oppression." Now think about what the typical letter from your average modern-day soldier to his girlfriend back home in, like, New Jersey's got to read like. "Dear Marie, it is hot as fuck out here. It is hard to fight these sand monkeys with your balls stuck to your legs. It is very, very hot out here because I am in the desert. What else did I want to ask you? Oh yeah, don't fuck nobody, like it back.